Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, and today we are going to be talking about the United Kingdom, which has officially been declared a country in a recession. Obviously, the UK has been in a recession more or less the last 11 years, but as this BBC News article says, UK officially in recession for first time in 11 years. And we're going to go into this and more as people are feeling the crippling results of the absolute economic mayhem we're watching across the globe right now. But first, make sure to hit that like button, check the links below, and share on social media to help us get around the shadow banning. Join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Join us on Flote, BitChute, Minds and LBRY, all linked below, my friends, as we are leaving YouTube by November 5th, 2020, only showing trailers for our full videos on the other sites on YouTube in the future after November 5th. Obviously, you can pledge to us below and donate to us below, as well as we are completely viewer funded and completely demonetized here on YouTube. You can find all of those links below. Anyway, let's get into this. As this article says, UK officially in recession for first time in 11 years. Well, for the first time in 11 years, they've admitted that they're in a recession. They have been in a recession. The total of those 11 years is papered over, but nonetheless, let's get into the article here. It says, the UK economy suffered its biggest slump on record between April and June as coronavirus lockdown measures pushed the country officially into recession. The economy shrank 20.4% compared with the first 3 months of the year. Household spending plunged as shops were ordered to close, while factory and construction output also fell. This pushed the UK into its first technical recession, to find us 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline since 2009. Chancellor Rishi Sunak told the BBC that the government was grappling with something that is unprecedented and that it was a very difficult and uncertain time. But Shadow Chancellor Annalise Dodds blamed Prime Minister Boris Johnson for the scale of the economic decline, saying a downturn was inevitable after lockdown, but Johnson's jobs crisis wasn't. This is absolutely ridiculous, of course, because as we know, the UK has been dealing with this for years through just massive amounts of central planning. Kids were showing up for school for the last several years, a huge portion of them, huge percentage of them without food, unable to afford food just for lunch. People have been on government assistance like crazy, and to blame Boris Johnson, does he have some effect on it? Sure, but to blame him for it is absolutely absurd, no matter what you think of him, because that just goes against the basic fundamentals of the economic system in the UK. As this article at Zero Hedge says, hard times are here. UK economy suffers record collapse as GDP plummets to 2003 levels. And it says down here below in the article, and I quote, "Today's figures confirm that hard times are here," said Finance Minister Rishi Sunak. "Hundreds of thousands of people have already lost their jobs, and sadly, in the coming months, many more will." The data confirmed that the world's 6th biggest economy has entered a recession, with the low point coming in April, when output was more than 25% below its pre-pandemic level. In recent months, there has been a modest improvement as GDP rose by 8.7% month over month in June. Cumulatively, through the first 2 quarters of 2020, GDP fell by 22%. Given the scale of that shock, the level of GDP at the end of Q2 was in line with the level of quarterly GDP in mid-2003. Absolutely insane. And by the way, they keep blaming the pandemic. You've got to blame the government, because the government's the one that shut it down. The government's the one that built up this massive bubble. The government's the one that created this problem in the first place alongside the central banks. And then it comes to fruition with a catalyst, which is a coronavirus, obviously a bioengineered weapon as it is. And then they're coming in saying, maybe things are going to get better. They're not going to get better anytime soon. By December, most businesses will be gone. Most of the small businesses that have been just living off of cash this whole time. It's absolutely devastating what's happening right now. Tim, let's go into this. What do you think of this technical recession in the UK?
I'm glad you said technical recession, because a recession is defined by 2 negative quarters of GDP. And John Snice and I did a video that's on Wham maybe about 6-7 months ago, and it was called "The Case for No More Recessions Ever." And the reason for that, it wasn't to say that there couldn't be a recession, is that they do so many different things to game these numbers that it took something as incredible as having the cumulative GDP going down 25%, or in America I think it's like 33.2 or something, so, or maybe 32, because I remember it's 32.9 because I remember commenting, oh, it couldn't be 33 because or like it goes down 666 points or something.
Symbology.
They always like to pull that type of stuff, but but then you have to understand how they come up with the GDP numbers. So they take whatever the GDP is, and then they end up then subtracting the inflation rate. So if the GDP is let's say it's hypothetically growing at 3%, which it's not, it's collapsing by 25. But if it was growing at 3 and inflation they say is 1, well then 3 minus 1 is 2. But what if inflation was really 5%? Then 3 minus 5 is -2. So these are the types of games that they play. John Williams of shadowstats.com has been really great on this. But if you understand how they, and then let's say you start allocating money to go bomb Libya or to go bomb all these other places. Now all of a sudden you've spent more money. Doesn't mean that we're better off for it, because now it's a future tax our kids are going to have to pay. But now,
of course, deficit spending, they could learn a lot from the Romans in that sense, where they will just print a bunch and then throw it at random things like weapons manufacturers and have a war save the monetary system, only to collapse it again later down the line.
And we've been taught that war is the health of the economy, and that it was the war that got us out of World War I and World War II. Even though that's all propaganda, and it was really when the troops came home and started spending money at home is when you really started seeing things take off. But
wait, it wasn't FDR's New Deal?
Yeah, when he was a guy, was putting, Japanese and Italian Americans in internment camps, but now he's, somehow the bastion, liberal, leftist god over there. But, it is crazy. And then we did see, the hard times. Well, at least the times aren't as hard anymore, because they now allow you to have sex with people outside of your home in UK, whereas at one
Amazing. They did that in Canada too. You're actually allowed to have sex with people consensually without government putting you in jail. It's we're so lucky. We're so free.
Because at one point, we're not actually making this up. They actually banned having sex with people outside of your home. Because I think some of the scuttlebutt on that was that guy, what's his name, Niles Ferguson, out of that Imperial College of London, was banging some environmentalist girl, and he's the one who then came up with these models that were going to have tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people dying. He was funded also by Bill Gates.
He also did the numbers for like Ebola and Zika and all these other things that were supposed to be like 100 million times higher.
And actually, I ended up buying all the masks back and hazmat suits back then. It was funny because it's like, well, Ebola is something that actually, you've got like a 50% coin flip, if it's going to kill you or not if you end up getting it. But continuing on with my story, the kind of word in the street is that it was Niles Ferguson who ended up getting coronavirus, knew he had coronavirus, and then infected Boris Johnson. And then now they're blaming Boris Johnson for everything. And again, all these guys are scumbags, puppets, guys that can be interplaced, but they want to have their cake and eat it too. Just like with Trump, obviously Josh and I are not, huge Trump fanboys, but to try to say that everything is the blame when he was trying to ban people from China, and then, he was a racist, and he didn't ban people quick enough. And then so, they always want to do whatever they can to just take the other side to make their opponents look bad. But getting back to the,
I just want to say that, at the same time, what it comes down to is distracting people, misdirecting people, and dividing people against each other. So utilizing every crisis with the opportunity to drive people against each other, so they don't look at the real enemy. That being the state, that being the central banking system, that being the the institution that's creating vast amounts of inflation or deflation, depending on what when we're looking at this, and have crazy low interest rates, if not negative interest rates, and then coming in as a solution to the problem that they created in the first place, and then blaming something that didn't cause a problem for the problem just because it was a catalyst for something that was going to happen eventually anyway. I mean, it's all mixed up. It's all messed up. That's why people like us in independent media are so shadow banned and so completely censored, because we've been pointing this out from the beginning, and we've been bang on the entire time. And, we're still crazy though.
Yeah, and this has just been just another financialization of the economy, because what we've seen, in the last example I was giving, or the first one, that it all really deals with the inflation rate, because if you rig the inflation rate, then that rate then leads to all the other rates, and because if you didn't rig that number, you technically probably wouldn't be out of recession. But if you can make the top line number higher by printing money, it greatly distorts everything. But right now, we're in this gigantic global Ponzi scheme where we need to have more and more growth, and we have to keep growing and growing and growing, because there's such a huge derivatives bubble that any basically, you know, one card getting pulled out of that derivatives bubble, you know, as the entire house is going to come crumbling down. Now, you had mentioned, you know, a lot of these things are already planned. So, I mean, you think it's an accident when the first $1,200, you know, checks that were going to go to Americans were the original bill was calling for a Federal Reserve account that your money gets deposited into. And this is another, I'm going to track this back to something else that I believe in April 1st, the guy that was taking over for the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, I mean, try saying that one, you know, 5 times fast. But, you know, with that guy was the former, I believe it was Coinbase CFO, either CFO or it wasn't CEO, but it was, I believe it was the CFO anyway, or Chief Technical Officer. So now they have, at the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, you have a former Coinbase guy who is now running it, and you think that that's like an accident? It's all, you know, because everything is going digital, and this is all being used as an excuse to get us on the universal basic income. It's going to be through a Federal Reserve controlled account over in England. It's going to be at the Bank of England. It's going to probably do the exact same thing. And then above that, since the Bank of International Settlements, they have, you know, many white papers on this subject, and then that universal basic income is then going to be tied to social, you know, credit scores, which is then going to be tied to, you know, hey, you didn't get your vaccine, so guess what? You're not getting any money this month. And so then it's going to force you to do that, just like, you know, eventually they're probably going to do the same thing with self-driving cars eventually on a long enough time horizon. Like, oh, you know, you're not forced to do it, but we're going to make, you know, the other people's insurance a lot less, and eventually we're going to make yours a lot more. And so all this is social engineering, and this is the time to be as vigilant as possible, because this is the end game. They're going for broke right now, and in terms of going for broke, they're going to make a lot of us broke. I won't say us is not necessarily you and me, but a lot of the general public is going to be broke from you know, from what they're doing by trying to financialize everything, and they're never willing to take any short-term pain. And because they're not willing to take any short-term pain, they're just making this problem much worse in the long run. Right. And who knows, maybe we're going to have some sort of debt jubilee, you know, and then even how does that work? And like, what if I just paid off $100,000 of debt, and then you've got some other guy who's out there partying, and then now, you know, he goes and buys a boat and all this other crap, and then you just worked hard to pay off your debt, and then now, you know, your debt that you already paid off, you know, are you going to be compensated for that when you could have been putting the money elsewhere? I mean, there's no easy solution, especially.
Well, actually, this is why a lot of people aren't paying off their credit cards right now, because they feel, a lot of people just think they'll never have to. Like, it's just like, why? They're probably going to do a debt jubilee. Why would I even have to pay it off? So a lot of people are just running up their credit cards right now with no way of paying it back, which people have been doing for a long time, but there's a lot more people doing that right now. And just to bounce back to the UK, Tim, I do want to mention that a while ago I did report on it, and it's been banned from Google for me to search the story up, so I can't find it at this moment to show you on the screen. But it was an article from a while ago that I reported on how the UK, the government, has decided that a lot of these businesses who cannot pay back their loans that they got from the government, the small businesses, that the government, instead of making them pay back the debt, will just take equity in the companies, which is fascism. And like, literally, they've been saying that they're doing what the IMF in China does, and the US to some extent, going around the world loaning countries money, and then when the country can't pay it back, just taking over that country like China does in Africa, or the IMF does in Central America. And now UK is doing that with small businesses under the guise of helping people. And, you know, these virtue signalers that say they're super anti-fascist are then committing a fascist crime against small businesses, taking over small businesses under the guise of helping them. It's obviously a trick. It's obviously a control plot, and we have to be onto their tricks. We have to wrap it up shortly, but add whatever you want.
Central banks buying bonds. I mean, that is also fascism. And then the other thing that pisses me
airlines.
They're always rewrite the rules. So like in 2009, GM, you know, instead of, you know, having the stockholders getting wiped out and then having the company go to the bondholders, the U.S. government decides, oh, we're just going to take a stake in GM and, you know, quote unquote save it. And you know, it's just one thing that, you know, the government's, you know, here picking winners and losers, except, you know, basically what they're doing is just picking a bunch of losers all the time. But there's no, you know, and so many people, even going back to airlines, it's not like all these people would just lose their jobs and there'd be no more planes left. You know, it would get restructured, reorganized, be better off for the future, but instead we have to, you know, constantly kick the can down the road, and eventually we're going to break both our feet trying to kick this can, because we're at the point where, you know, there's just no way to, I mean, when you talk about drain the swamp of the financial system has gotten worse. And you can't, you know, fix all these problems at the top if the underlying foundation is crap. And if the underlying foundation is a debt-based system that's backed up by all these derivatives that, you know, we have to pay interest to private bankers who never had that money to begin with, which a lot of it does emanate from England, going back to the Bauer family, which was really the Rothschild family, and the Oppenheimers, and how they basically manipulated us into this whole central banking system. Their agent in America was Alexander Hamilton, which is why he's deified. Anyways, we've talked about this a lot in the past. I'm not going to, that's a whole nother like 10-minute rabbit hole we're going to go down. But yeah, they're always making these numbers out to be a lot better than what they really appear to be. They rig these stuff. And if you guys want to, I know I wrote a book on how they rig the numbers. I mean, it applies mainly to American companies or the country as a whole. But you guys can text, the number is 71441. And if you want to text either WHAM, W-A-M, or Liberty Advisor, one word, they both will get you that book. And it's just great information where if you don't know it yourself, then it's great information to have at the water cooler, which I guess they don't have water coolers because you're all working from home nowadays. But
I mean, yeah, and obviously if you're in the UK, you're not able to work with Tim, but Tim, of course, is a certified financial planner. So if you're in the United States and you're interested, check out the libertyadvisor.com below. I do want to point out, you mentioned, so it's like people don't realize that competition is a thing. Like businesses can't compete against each other for the best and the lowest prices for the best product, which happened for generations, for centuries, for millennia, and then government comes in and restricts that and then says they're helping. It's like Ralph Wiggum saying he's helping. He's not helping. You're making it worse. And if you stop bailing out these major institutions, you won't have the monopolies. And if you don't have the monopolies, then small businesses can compete for the best price and the best product, and the competition would be better. There'd be better products coming out of it, and there's the hovercrafts right there. I mean, honestly, it's absolutely absurd. Anyway, we got to wrap this up because we've gone on too long, coronavirus. I want to just let everyone know, once again, to hit that like button, share on social media, to get around the shadow banning, join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com, all linked below. Check those links below in the description as well as a pinned comment. But join us on Flote.app, BitChute, Minds, and LBRY. Time to get off of YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. And, of course, go to the libertyadvisor.com if you want to become a client of Tim's. And, obviously, we have ways that you can pledge and donate, as we are completely viewer-funded. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. Check those out below, and of course our crypto addresses. Anyways, we really appreciate everyone watching. Don't be a slave, be free, live by example, and break free from the chains that so many unfortunately revere under the guise of, oh, we're going to be saved by the government that enslaved you in the first place. Don't fall for it anyway, guys. I really appreciate everyone watching, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. My friends, it is go time. We are completely demonetized on YouTube, and we depend on the viewer to stay alive and spread the message of freedom and truth. So check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, anything you guys could do to help keep independent media alive helps enormously in helping spread this message to the masses. So make sure to check those links. Donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen or below. We really appreciate anything you could do to keep us alive. You could check those links below for Cointree as well, where you can find other cryptocurrencies that you can donate and keep WHAM alive. Find us on Flote.app, Flote.app, as well as BitChute and LBRY and Minds. We're on all the other platforms. We are leaving YouTube soon, so make sure to find us at those sites, because it's the only way we can keep talking to you, the masses, the great people that actually care about the future of free humanity. Also, join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Anything helps at this point, guys. We need to support free information online. This is the most difficult time in our history, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep our message alive in the face of great evils that have taken over the propaganda news on television as well as on YouTube, where YouTube decides what you can or cannot see. We need your help, my friends. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do. Check those links. There's many ways you can help. Until next time, though, thanks, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.